All right, guys, Jacob here. Miami Dolphins Syndicate, another car reaction video. Watching up again, up in Hooters, up in Boca Raton. Watch their week one. We won. Watch there today. Not so much. Dolphins lose 24-3, and boy, was that a mess of a game. That was awful. Some of you watching, if you stopped watching before halftime, after halftime, I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't watch at all. That was horrible. In every sense of the word, that was a horrible performance all across the board, except, the defense had some really good moments, and the defense is where I'm least concerned about, even though the drives that the Seahawks did put together, it was such a mediocre offense. I don't think either team walks away from this extremely happy. Obviously, the Dolphins don't for a multitude of reasons, but the Seahawks, look, you won against a beat-up team, and nothing necessarily looked great, but you won, so who cares? You didn't have to do anything too crazy because this Dolphins team didn't ask you to, except for a couple drives that you had two longer drives that resulted in touchdowns, but otherwise, you just pretty much coast through the entire game, which is fine. That's fine, but it's nothing to put on billboards about. But as for the Dolphins, horrible. I know the situation the Dolphins are in. Obviously, being without Tua, losing Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson's not even really that good to begin with. That is just such a tall task to ask. But I am really starting to question what Mike McDaniel really is. Ingenious play caller, yeah. Very creative with his offensive scheme. Very, very new school quarterback. What he's asking of the quarterback, what he's asking of his receivers, what he's asking of his entire offense to do is very new, and trying to redesign the wheel, reimagine the wheel, whatever the phrase is. But when you strip all that away, when you strip away all the flair, when you strip away, the big chunk plays that Tyreek Hill is capable of, that Achan's capable of, when you remove all of the facade, what is this Dolphins team when you just ask them to run a very standard offense? They can't. We look terrible in the red zone. We look terrible on third down. We were terrible on third down. The penalties, dear Lord, the penalties, the pre-snap, being able to manage the play clock. I mean, the lack of discipline that this team showed today is incredible. If you lose, you lose. You're without Tua. Very difficult situation to go into, going all the way across the country to Seattle, even fully healthy. It was going to be a very difficult ask against a clearly improved Seahawks team from last year. Now 3-0 on the season. After the result of the games, now 2 games clear in the NFC West. Who would have thought that after 3 games? But it was already going to be a very difficult ask. But then 11 penalties, I think like 90 yards those penalties were worth. The discipline is just absolutely not there. Everything's so loose, and that's what we saw last year in Hard Knocks. It's a very loose ship. It's a very player-friendly team to be on, but there's so little accountability and so little improvements on past mistakes. Last year, all year long, penalties were an issue. Being not able to manage the play clock, having to use those timeouts because you can't get the play off in time. I don't care who is under center. You got to break the huddle before 10 seconds on the play clock. How many times did we see that happen today? How many timeouts had to be used because they couldn't get the play off in time? And even when you then get to the line of scrimmage, you only have 2 seconds to run the play. That eliminates all pre-snap movement. That eliminates the quarterback's ability to read the defense. You're literally just breaking the huddle, turning around, snapping the ball. Best case scenario. Not having to use a timeout, not having a bad play, a loss, interception. Quarterback who you're already clearly thin at with poor quarterback play because of the injury to Tua. You already have poor quarterback play. You then go to the line and do not give them any time to read the defense. And, when this was first happening, I think some of us put a lot of blame on Tua just because he's the quarterback. You need to be able to effectively communicate the play to your offense to be able to get the play done in a timely fashion. But this has happened with every quarterback that has been in a huddle for a Mike McDaniel offense. They can't get the play in time. I'm not mad that Tyreek Hill didn't have a big game, or Waddle didn't have a big game, and Achane had, not as good of a game as he's had throughout this season. I'm not mad about the score. I'm not mad about the loss. I'm mad about how we got to that point. In spite of the injuries, obviously knowing we shouldn't have been favored to go into the game. I predicted us to win. Look, am I a bit of an optimist? Yes. Am I a fan? What is fan short for? Fanatic. I'm going to try to root on my Dolphins. I'm going to try to, if I'm going to err one side or the other, it's going to be slightly positive. But would it have been a surprise that we lost this game? Absolutely not. Everything I just mentioned, going across country to a good football team, you were very beat up, especially at the main position. I get that. It's the shooting yourself in the foot, the nonsense that goes on that can be fixed, but time and time again is not fixed. Questions have to be asked with Mike McDaniel. You run such a loose ship. Things are sloppy. And so then you expect the offense to have to run on a needle edge perfection. The offense has to running a timing offense. Everything has to be perfect down to the last minute detail. We saw that with the interception against the Bills last week with Robbie Anderson, where his route is slightly off, runs slightly the wrong route, it results in interception. We saw that week 18 last year, last game of the season, we're driving down the field, potentially take the lead and win the division for the first time in over a decade, and Chase Claypool slightly runs the route wrong, runs it a little deep, runs it a little shallow, whatever it was, but just that small difference in his route, interception, game's over. You run your offense on such a fine needle for it to work to perfection, and yet you don't have the other little nooks and crannies of what the team is supposed to be doing. You don't have that figured out. You don't have the discipline. You don't have the ability to just run the play on time. That's what I'm most frustrated about this game. We lost, okay, cool. On to Tennessee, Monday Night Football. You have an extra day to prepare. The games that Tua is expected to miss is you obviously just lost this game to Seattle. You got Tennessee, you got New England, you got Indianapolis. Those are games in which you should be able to compete in, Tua or not. But I think it's a very big indoctrination of what Mike McDaniel is when you pull back the layers. Sloppy, inefficient, runs a loose ship, and you can clearly say that in the players, the penalties, the poor time management. There are things that Mike McDaniel needs to fix that he still has yet to fix. And it is infuriating seeing the same mistakes over and over and over again. I'm not calling for Mike McDaniel to be fired. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. When everything is working well, everything is working great. At the top of the Miami Dolphins top, the best we can play is the best team in the league. When we are at our absolute best. We saw that 3 weeks through the season last year. This exact point last year, we were probably the best team in the league. And then things started to unravel. Injury here and there, but mistakes were made, games were lost. Some losses were better than others, but then again, the conversation of the Dolphins be good teams, that pops up. Still something that looms over the team now here. We were at one point the best team in the league last year. Who can we beat in the NFL today? Carolina Panthers with Andy Dalton are a completely different football team. Completely different football team with a quarterback that, look, he understands the situation that the Panthers are in right now. They're not a good football team. They don't have great weapons, but he has dealt with this in the past. He is a professional. He knows how to sit in the pocket, go through his reads, hit his guy, even if he's not the most open, even if it's not the best read, even if it's not going to gain a lot of yards. Andy Dalton understands how to sit back there in the pocket. I was willing to say the Rams about an hour ago, maybe we can beat the Rams, and then they just come back, 3 scores down against the 49ers. The Cowboys nearly came back on the Ravens. Who's left? The Raiders last week went to Baltimore to beat the Ravens. The Giants just went to Cleveland and beat the Browns. Daniel Jones looked good against a really solid Browns defense. Who in the NFL, with a backup quarterback, can the Miami Dolphins for sure beat? We probably beat New England. We probably still beat Carolina. There probably still be a few teams in the league. Probably. But I can't say for certainty there is a single team the Dolphins can beat playing like this. And it's not even about how the offense looked, which was awful. No symmetry between Skylar Thompson and Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, all of their catches were manufactured. This is what you're going to do. We are going to get you the ball in this spot rather than it flowing naturally in the offense. There was like pity check down screens because that's all we could run at the end of the game. Okay, Waddle, you get one. Now Tyreek, you get one. Nothing felt organic. And yes, I understand. Backup quarterback, why should it? Well, if Mike McDaniel is as good of a offensive play caller as he claims he is, as we think he is, then you should be able to look better than that. And I've barely even talked about the actual gameplay. Mistakes, the same type of mistakes over and over again are going to kill this Dolphins team, whether Tua's playing or not. Whether Tom Brady comes out of retirement to play for the Dolphins or not, these same mistakes you cannot win with over 11 penalties and having to use timeouts because you can't get the play call in time. These are mistakes that you cannot have as a winning football team. And time again, the Dolphins shoot themselves in the foot with these issues. I'm mad. I'm not mad about the loss. 24-3. Yeah. If it was 24-17, would I feel any better? If the game played out differently, maybe. But a loss is still a loss. I'm not too bothered by the loss itself. There's still a lot of season left to go. Looks like Tua is going to come back. If we win one game out of these 4 games, you're, 2-4? All right, that's not great, but, you deal with what you got to deal with, and you figure it out from there. I'm frustrated. Don't care about the points. Everything looked bad. Defense, you know what? Cool. Defense looked good for most of the game. Defense, Anthony Weaver, the things that I'm complaining about in terms of lack of discipline, you don't see that a lot on the defense. 2 long drives the Seahawks had. Otherwise, it was a very, it was a very underwhelming offensive game from the Seahawks, but also in fairness, they didn't have to do that. So, defense, all right, played decent. Everything else, not good enough. Certainly not good enough to go on and beat some of these better teams we're going to have to play later on this season. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Air out your frustration. Go out, call me stupid that I said we were going to win. If you're a Seahawks fan coming over here, by all means, go for it, because, I have nothing to defend with this Dolphins team, how they played just now. So let me know your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, the gist. We'll be coming out tomorrow with a more in-depth breakdown. But till then, have a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins.